Welcome to the Real Life Podcast at Hermitage Hills, where we have real honest conversations with real people about topics relevant for today. At Hermitage Hills, we desire to see people experience life change through Jesus Christ. For more information about our church and how you can be a part of the community here, visit hermitagehills.com/connect.
I'm going to tell you what, Marcus, I love that because I think that's such a good word for anybody in anything. You do the work, you do the next thing, you work hard, you prepare yourself, but at the end of the day, God's going to do what God's going to do.
Yeah.
And you were prepared when the door opened.
And that 4 or 5 months between when I got the call to actually going out with them,
Yeah.
I do want to just say before we fully segue into music stuff, is I had so much growth, not just in my spirit, but also in my actual career, because one of the biggest things that I tell people to this day when I sit down and get coffee with people is like, biggest parts of my testimony is like, whenever you truly realize that you have no control over that and you truly just trust the Lord, it's freeing and it gives you a boldness. Like, I'm extremely introverted. 2-3 years ago, we would not be sitting here because I wouldn't have done this. I would have just said, thank you, but no thank you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
But whenever you truly realize that it's not in your control anyways, it gives you a boldness to go up and talk to that person or to put your name in that hat for that opportunity. Or even to just take something that you're not 100% sure that you can do, because it's very possible that on your own you can't do it. But whenever you have that boldness that comes with like walking in the Holy Spirit,
Yes.
you just find yourself equipped to do amazing things.
I love that. What a word. What a word. And I know you say 3 years ago you wouldn't have done it, and I do believe you, but now that I know you and we're besties, I would have then said, well, you can't do it anyway. And then you would have said, oh, yes, I can, because you don't like to be told what you can't do.
Very possible. It probably would have taken me like a couple weeks to come back around to it.
So there you go.
Yeah.
So, okay, so let's talk music.
Sure.
What is it like, and this is such a broad question, but what is it like being a musician in Nashville, in Music City?
Well, that is a very loaded question.
I know.
And it is something that has changed a lot in the past 2 years with this pandemic.
Yeah.
The very essence of what life is like on the road, the way like sessions look, all that is changed. But in general, I mean, what part of it do you want to know about?
Well, you know what? That's a great. Let me break it down a little bit. Okay, now this is my non-musician understanding of
Sure.
music. So you have session music, okay. You have touring,
Yeah.
right, and then what else? I mean, is there something else?
Well, yeah, in general, I do think you can kind of like the macro view is you have like the studio side and the live side.
Okay, so let's do this. Let's talk about the studio side first.
Okay.
Studio side. What is that?
So that's writing music, that's producing music, that's actually playing stuff in, that is, and there's a little bit of crossover there to the live side with like arranging music. Okay. And there's also arranging for like records and stuff, which is something that I would love to do down the road.
Yeah.
Like a lot of my heroes, like Quincy Jones, or
Yes.
all those kinds of people.
Yeah.
So that's the studio side of it.
Okay.
And I mainly do the session playing where people hire me to come in and play any number of keyboards or program synthesizers or sampling, or even do pre-production, which is like, pre-production is like whenever you you want to go in before all the musicians show up to the studio and you want to like program some stuff to kind of give them a sort of canvas to paint their colors onto.
That's a good illustration. I understand that.
Yeah. So that might be like putting some like drum loops in there, or like some synth melodies or whatever, some things that might take more time, because one of the things that like, one of the sort of draws of session work to me is that it's such a unique challenge. Like, even if the song that you're doing doesn't sound difficult to the listener, to have the kind of intention of like, I'm going to play this and I'm going to know my part so well that like it's going to be exactly the same every single time. Or I'm going to play something and like, let's say you have a flub in the intro,
right,
and you have to remember exactly what that flub is going to be and go through the entire song and then come back and say, hey, let me grab that intro again. But you might have to do it like 15 minutes later. So it's like that kind of like mental stamina is such a cool challenge to me.
Yeah.
And I feel like it really just anyone, I feel like session music just like grows a person's like musicianship like none other, because you have to be so intentional.
Okay, so that is so interesting, because I think probably, I mean, I know we're in Nashville, but I just feel like there's a lot of people like me who see a song and like, oh my gosh, that was so good. They probably just sat down and wrote it, got together and sang it, and I'm super glad they did. And just learning this, there's so much more to it.
Well, that's the beautiful thing, is sometimes it is exactly like that.
Oh, it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think about whenever we wrote Hallelujah Our King,
Yes.
which is the song that was on The Chosen.
Yes.
So there were 4 people in that room. There was me, my buddy Neiman, who
The drummer.
brought me to Jordan himself, and this other guy in LA named Paul Duncan, who you might not know Paul, but you definitely are fans of his work, because he's written so many songs that everyone loves on the radio.
Okay.
He's just a great dude.
Okay.
So there was the 4 of us, and we wrote Hallelujah Our King in like 45 minutes. It was just like, Jordan was like
45 minutes.
Yeah.
Wow.
It was like, and Jordan was like, I have this like chorus idea and this melody, and then Paul is like a genius with lyrics, and then I was over there kind of programming like piano in and drums while they were all talking, and then just boop 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 boop, and then that's the song.
And there it came.
And then it was like, okay, well now let's go record it, because at that point that was like a kind of a work tape, or like a really rough demo.
Mm-hmm.
And so then later on, like I kind of finished out that and turned it into like a demo, which is just like, it's not something that's like radio ready, but it's more produced than like what you would do in 45 minutes.
And so who would hear that, by the way? What's the audience for something like that?
The label.
Okay.
Because they're eventually the ones that's going to put the money down to make the record.
So that's kind of their, yeah, we like this, we're moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, got it.
And so the label loved it. And we actually wrote a few more songs there, but the label loved it. And then we got some buddies together, and me and Neiman and our other friend, Austin Goodlow, we did some pre-production for like 2 or 3 days. And then we went to the studio and we made the record. And that's kind of like a more recent experience, but that's kind of how the process works.
Okay. All right. Well, that's for me as an English major, what you're talking about, I'm like, oh, that's your formal rough draft.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. And there's always like, the really cool thing is whenever you just have those kind of intuitive moments where it's like, we've gone through the write, the scratch, the demo, and now we're in the studio, but man, this other idea feels super cool. So let's do that. And it's just like when you get people in the room together, and that's when the magic happens, really. And so that's why it's so important to get your people,
right?
The people that you work well with together.
Is it hard to get a position in the studio? But if a musician's come in here, where do they break in first?
You know how people always talk about how it's who you know.
Yeah,
that's where that comes in. And there's a really interesting thing that I've started to realize about session work in Nashville, is that producers a lot of times, they don't just hire like one person. They very rarely do they like, oh, I'm going to hire my favorite keys player, my favorite drummer, my favorite bass player. They're going to hire like groups of people. So it's like
there's a synergy already
exactly.
Within them.
So it's like from like me and Neiman, like if like we've done so many sessions together, and it's because people who know us know that we work really well together. So usually there's a solid chance that if I'm being hired, Neiman's going to be there, or if Neiman's getting hired, then I'm going to be there.
You're going to be there.
And that's how that kind of happens.
Yeah.
And so you do that and you crush it, and then you kind of get the next call.
Yeah. And it goes like that. So basically, when somebody else comes after you, Marcus, and says we want to do a podcast, you're going to be like, great, I got to bring Julie.
Basically. Absolutely. Or Israel.
That's right.
He's doing the most.
That's right. So, yeah. Okay, so next question, because this is really interesting to me. So you talked about live music in touring. How does that happen?
So shows, at least there's always been live music. Live music predates recorded music by thousands of years.
Yes.
If you think about it.
Yeah, that's right. And I never have, but you're right.
I mean, recorded music is only about 100 years old, maybe 120 years old. So there's always been people getting together to play music. And just over time, an industry has evolved and been created around it. But as far as the way it plays into like studio stuff, definitely in the today's music industry, with the fact that like people are not buying CDs anymore.
Right.
Everything is Spotify
Right.
or like YouTube streams.
Right.
You know.
That's what I do.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's what I do too.
Yeah.
It's practical.
Sure. Yeah.
But the main way that like musicians are able to make a living, even during recorded music, is to go out and play live, sell a bunch of merch, and
Yeah.
and so they definitely like work together.
So what happened in 2020 when COVID hit and you couldn't go live?
That is
And you couldn't sell your merch. By the way, all that's merchandise. I know the words. Okay, go on.
yeah. Well, that is where, you know, God's faithfulness really comes into play, because it was a really scary time. There's a lot of people who had long careers at that point in the music industry who are no longer in the music industry.
Wow.
Because they had to pay their mortgages, they had to support their families, and they found other things. And now that things are kind of starting, by the grace of God, to move back, spin back up, there's a lot of shifting that's happening. But for me, like, for me, it was, I just kind of fell back on like other things. You know, I started doing a lot more church work again, you know, and it was actually really cool because Easter of 2020, technically I played at 3 different churches.
Really? Oh, because it was all video.
It was all video. It was all pre-recorded.
Yeah.
Or at least worked at 3 different.
Sure,
and Hermitage Hills was one of those.
I know. We talked about. We're going to talk about that, y'all, in a minute.
Yeah. So I spent most of 2020 at my desk at home making tracks for churches, and then doing like remote session work, because it's like budgets might have dried up and people might not have been able to get together in the studio, but records were still getting made.
Yes.
And so like a lot of musicians really upped their remote game. Sorry, remote is like a remote session, like a session you do at home. So I probably only got in the studio maybe like once or twice in 2020, and it was only like big studios where everyone could kind of spread out. Most of the time, and even to this day, most of the time, like people just send me files and I do it at home and send it back. And I actually love that because it's my home, my house, my gear. I don't have to load in. I don't have to drive anywhere. And your introvert
personality too.
Yeah, and it's just kind of like my
your space.
My little hideaway.
So for an introvert, and really that has something to do with anything you just mentioned that you are, what's it like being on tour? What's it like performing on a stage?
Yeah, well, that is something that I've had to come to terms with.
Yeah.
I would say the biggest challenge for me is like stage presence, because
I think you're good at that. I watched your videos when I knew we were going to be doing this. I just kind of wanted to get a feel for you.
I've had to be really intentional about it.
Yeah.
I had a buddy one time who's a little bit older than me tell me, it was one of my first kind of like legit gigs. It was for an artist named Chris Blue. He like won The Voice a few years ago, and it's like kind of an R&B, soul pop kind of gig, very gospel-y. And I was like outgunned. Like he hired just all these hitters in the band, and then me. You know, and I was like, I walked into rehearsals and I was just like starstruck.
Right.
And I was like out of my league because like I was like reading off charts and I was just trying to keep up.
Right.
This is a long time ago. And I remember after our first show, he was the MD, by the way, the music director. And he had this way of talking to me like, it was always all love because he just was always in my corner, but he would also clown me so hard.
Yeah.
Which is like, I love people like that because I kind of do that too.
Yeah.
But he sent me a video of myself. And he was like, look how bad you look on stage. He's like,
I'm pretty sure he didn't say it that way, but go on.
That's basically what it was though.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
And so literally after that, I started like practicing in front of a mirror.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which it's not to say that it's not to say that it's fake.
Of course not.
But it's just practicing because the thing is like if you see people who have bad stage presence, on stage, they could be having the time of their lives.
Right.
But it's really just about taking that energy and like turning it on the outside and showing everyone else that you are having the time of your life.
Right.
And I love what I do.
Right.
I'm extremely passionate about what I do.
Yeah.
And so it's just practicing how this guy who cannot dance and is like, feels like a giant, like, you know.
Okay, it's funny you say that, y'all. Just a little side note. When Marcus came in, I'm like, Marcus, I've never seen you stand up. You're much taller than I thought you were.
Yeah. It's just like learning how to take that kind of like awkward dude and like just turn and show everyone that I'm enjoying what I'm doing.
That you're having fun.
Yeah.
What's it like living on a tour bus?
So, I love tour buses because for years it was just like vans. Mm-hmm. And, like I've done that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And flying too. I really hate flying, but it's part of the job.
Right.
But with busing, first of all, it's great because like tonight, I have a bus call tonight.
Okay.
I'm going out this week with Jason Crabb. We're doing 4 dates.
Nice.
And I'm just gonna get on the bus and go to bed and wake up, and I don't know where we're going.
Do you have like a bunk?
I do have a bunk. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I'm gonna wake up where we're going, and I'm gonna set my stuff up, eat some lunch.
Yep.
Do a sound check, play a show, tear it down, hang out, go to bed.
Yeah.
Do the same thing again. So that's pretty great.
Yeah. How many people are on a bus?
So that's what I was going to tell you.
Yeah.
Is it depends.
Oh.
Like, so it can really depend on who the artist is. Like if they own their own bus, that is a big thing. Mm-hmm. Because like in general, like a bus can bunk 12 people. Mm-hmm. And that's usually with like a lounge in the front, the bunk area, and then a lounge in the back. Mm-hmm. But like some people, like if they own their bus, they might convert the back lounge into like a master suite. Mm-hmm. And so then that's like one less area for people to hang out, which, I mean, obviously if it's their bus, it's whatever.
And bigger tours have like star buses and other buses.
Yeah, I mean, it really just depends on who the personnel is, what the crew is, because like you might have like a star bus, a crew bus, and then a band bus.
Okay.
It really depends.
Really just depends.
I have done tours like, again, you were asking me about like how we survived during the pandemic. Yeah. Like, you know, and budgets have shifted, and I've done like 40-date, 3-month-long tours where it's like the bus is completely full, all 12 people living in the same sort of 50-foot space, and that's rough.
I can imagine.
But it's also amazing.
Sure. Sure.
And it's kind of like you can always just kind of crawl into your bunk and close the curtain and kind of have your own little space, pull up some Netflix or read a book or something.
What's it like for your wife when you're gone for an extended period of time, I wonder?
Yeah, I mean,
I suppose she should answer that question, but she's not here.
Yeah, for sure. That is one thing that, because everyone's touring experience is different.
Right.
It really depends on who you're playing with, what part of the music business you're in. I will say that touring in CCM is a lot different than touring like in country or pop or whatever. And I know that with Jordan specifically, like one of the best things about the gig is that he's got kids.
Yeah.
You know, and other people in our camp have kids too. And so like this camp in general is very family oriented.
Yes.
And so like we're not going to be gone for like months at a time.
Got it.
We might be gone for like 2 weeks at the most at a time, and then come back for like a weekend and then go back out.
Yeah.
There are definitely some artists out there that they hit the road hard. And it really just depends on like the tour. Like if you do a West Coast tour, it's hard to come back, obviously, because it takes you 2 days to get to the West Coast anyways. So, you know, the touring experience, it really just depends on who you're out with as a big factor in how long you're out. Usually I'm not out for like longer than 2 weeks at a time, at least without coming back for like 48 hours, right? There might be the occasional time where it's like we're out for a month straight.
Yeah.
But my wife is very independent, and she has a career that she's passionate about. And I remember, because we dated for a long time before we got married, and I mean, she kind of knew where I was headed, and we had a lot of conversations where it was like, before we got married, where it was like, hey, it might not happen tomorrow or the next day or next year, but eventually I'm going to be gone for a long time, and that we need to be okay with that.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Don't ask me how kids play into that, because I have no idea.
You don't have that yet?
I do know that like Jordan is a perfect example. Our camp is very family oriented. He's got 2 kids. Other people in our camp have kids, and so like there is a way to do it.
Right.
But I have no idea how I'm going to feel once I'm a dad.
Yeah,
so.
I understand that.
Yeah.
So my last question, and then we're going to do something fun, and then we'll be done. But my last question, not that all of this hasn't been fun.
It's been great.
Right. Is so you filmed part of the Chosen movie when y'all performed. What was that like, filming that?
It was honestly amazing.
Yeah.
I wasn't I was familiar with the show, but I had never watched the episodes. But I went home afterwards and watched them all, and was just like, this is an amazing show.
Yeah.
It was truly like falling in love with Jesus all over again.
The show does a great job of doing that.
I will just say, like, I realized when I was watching it the first time that like I was still seeing like all those cartoons and like VeggieTales and stuff in my head when I was thinking about these really critical like New Testament kind of gospel stories, because that's kind of how it was first introduced to me. But like seeing live action, like, and seeing that way, it was just like, wow, like I relate to these people.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like especially like it's a different podcast episode, but like Simon Peter.
No, it's me. Yeah. I'm Peter. Oh, you're Peter too?
Oh, straight up.
How can Peter be both of us, but yet there he is?
Hey.
I'm 100%.
Yeah.
100% Peter.
But anyways, going and filming it was great. Like the crew was awesome. The location was so cool, just out in the desert in Utah.
Yeah.
The set was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was so cool because there was like, I mean, if you saw it, there's just all these people that are in our industry that are just like, just going to hang out with them, you know? And that's the coolest thing about being in CCM. It's like it might be apparent from this podcast, like I try to have my hands in a lot of different things, as much as I can. Right. But one thing I love about CCM, contemporary Christian music, is like I grew up listening to this stuff, you know? So it's like we're going out with Matthew West at the end of March, and it's like, I mean, I remember I've listened to Matthew West like my whole life, you know. So it's kind of cool to get to do that, and to be able to kind of make do my thing in CCM, and hopefully have that be received positively.
So this is what I want to know: do you prefer sweet or salty?
Like in general,
in food,
salty. Well,
okay.
Have you ever heard the term like umami?
No.
Yeah, it's like that. It's like kind of savory thing.
Oh, okay. So that's you then.
That's straight at me.
Okay. Summer or winter?
In Nashville, winter.
Okay.
But most other places, absolutely not.
Okay.
You know.
Yes.
Like if it gets like sub-zero, I'm not.
You're not there.
I'm not for that.
Okay. I already know the answer to this. Cat or dog?
Dog.
Clearly. What kind of dog is Bruno?
He's like a Chihuahua mix. He's about 4 years old.
Yeah.
And yeah, he's just the best.
Okay.
Great studio dog.
Oh, okay. Do you prefer TV or movies?
Movies.
Okay. Netflix or Prime?
That's a hard one.
I know.
They both have great offerings.
Yes.
But if I had to pick one,
yes,
probably Netflix.
Okay.
I think it's just got more, you know.
Favorite ice cream?
Cookies and cream, for sure.
That's a win.
Yeah.
Okay. Morning guy or night guy?
I am currently a night guy. I'm trying to become more of a morning guy.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Okay. Well, listen, guys, I want you guys to know, Marcus, I'm so appreciative of our time together. Yeah. And I didn't even, y'all need to listen to this because I don't even think you know. I mean, Marcus is a music director. See, I'm putting it at the end because now we know what these words are. A music director, a producer, a songwriter, a keyboardist. We know he's touring with Jordan Feliz. We know he's getting ready to go on tour with Matthew West. He has done work with, he mentioned Jason Crabb, Colton Dixon, Jordan Smith, Clark Beckham. I mean, he's a perfect guy to tell us what it's like to be a musician in Nashville. And we are so grateful at Hermitage Hills that when you're in town, that you're our guy on the keyboards.
Yeah,
and thank
wonderful.
You for that.
Of course.
Thank you for that.
It's been so much fun.
So I have a funny story I'll end with your friend Clark Beckham.
Okay.
Clark Beckham performed here, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago, I suppose. Probably a little longer than that. It was in Our Unexpected Christmas. And I was tasked with being like the Clark host. So we did a live where I asked him questions, kind of did an interview from the green room pre-show and whatnot. And I'm not going to lie, I was pretty excited that I was going to be the Clark host because shortly after American Idol and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I got brought down to earth, though, because while I was over here being the Clark host, The other host that we had, or the other special guest that we had, was a goat. Like, not the greatest of all time, a legitimate goat that was in the performance. I also was the goat host.
Oh, no.
So there were times that I had to tell Clark, I'm sorry, you're going to have to be on your own because now I have to go take care of the goat. And so when you talk about your pride and your ego and all those things, just know that that Clark Beckham had to share a stage with a goat.
Did the goat have anything insightful to say? Or
The goat did not, but it was a humbling moment.
I'm sure.
So anyway, Marcus, thank you so much.
Yeah,
Safe
of
travels
course.
to you, and we look forward to seeing you back here on Sunday morning on our platform.
Thank you so much.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, guys, so look, I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you learned a little bit about what it's like to be a musician in Nashville, and I hope you got some great insight from Marcus's story, because we really had some good God moments. We will link to the song from The Chosen and some of the bits from The Chosen as well, so that you guys can connect with some of the work that Marcus has done. So, guys, thank you, and we will see you next time on Real Stories, Real Faith, Real Life. I don't know, just a lot of realness on our podcast.
Absolutely.
So, bye, guys. Have a good evening.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Real Life, a ministry of Hermitage Hills. If you'd like to be a part of a community seeking to follow Jesus and experience life change, visit us at hermitagehills.com/connect. You'll also find ways to ask for prayer and how to take the next steps in your faith journey. We'd love to partner with you as you grow in your faith and experience real life.